All
All
right,
right.
everybody, welcome to what I believe is the 14th edition of Tequila Tuesday. I'm here with my good friend, Kevin Dorsey, better known as KD to all of you. And we're here to talk about mentorship. And it's a topic that seems to be gaining a little bit of steam right now, I think, in conversations, kind of how to find them, how to use them, utilize them, how to build a relationship with them, how to stick with this particular mentor even beyond, kind of like the first role or the first job if you work together, how to add value back and forth, and how to kind of end up with a mentor-mentee relationship that flip-flops back and forth. And I think I said this the other day, I can't remember where, but I said the other day that the best mentor-mentee relationship is one where the mentee ends up mentoring the mentor. And I feel that KD and I, have that kind of relationship. It was sometime I looked, KD, it was 2016. I got this message from KD on LinkedIn asking me to pick my brain. And I went and looked, and he always reminds me that I didn't respond to the first message. So today I decided to go look to see if I actually did or not. And I didn't. And I'm like, I bet I didn't respond to the first message because he wrote, I want to pick your brain. And I'm like, nah, I'm not gonna do that. So he waited like a couple months. I think it was November, the first one. And then it was like February 2017. He sends me another message. He's like, hey, I'm building out a sales team for the first time to like a large scale. Wanted to, ask you a couple questions about this and that. And oh, by the way, I hired so-and-so. She used to work for you. Said great things about you. I want to, learn more about her and how I can get the most out of her. And oh, by the way, congratulations on opening this office. So totally different kind of message. And that kind of launched, our relationship. I responded to that and we started chatting a little bit. We met in Atlanta a few years ago at a Rainmaker conference held by Sales Loft. And, kind of had a funny chat like outside of the main auditorium a little bit. And, Kevin came to Costa Rica, came down to surf and sales. You might not know this, but the only person in sales leadership that I know who loves Costa Rica as much as me is KD. I'll let him share, his stories and his personal kind of journey with Costa Rica if he wants. So we met down there and we were just like, man, we are, very similar, very like-minded. Like there's things that I am terrible at that he's really good at. There's some things that he struggles with that I'm really good at. And then, I had to keep this secret for like a long time. It's like this dude wants to leave LA and he's going to come to Austin. And I'm like sharing my real estate agent. I'm like, you should live, right here. Turns out, now he's my neighbor. And so it's been a lot of fun. We get to hang out, quite a bit and love talking to him. Of course, got a lot of good information and good knowledge. And I thought he'd be a good person to talk to about this, mentee kind of relationship and just mentorship at scale, which is something that he and I, are working on, together. And I'll let him, get into some of that stuff. So long introduction, KD, but, tell these people who you are and I'll kind of turn it over to you and I'll start paying attention to the chat, fielding people's questions and building out a queue here.
For sure. So one, he nailed the story, and I'm sure we'll get into some more of the details as it goes. But Kevin Dorsey, pretty much everyone calls me KD. I love building and scaling sales teams. It's what I do. It's what I enjoy. I'm very, very passionate about this industry, about this role, about what we get the opportunity to do. And so I'm just this real student of the game. I'm at Patient Pop now. I'm the VP of Inside Sales. My org there is just under 100 right now. It was about 150-ish before the peak of COVID. And unfortunately, we had to go through a riff earlier last year. And now we're finally back in growth mode. So really enjoy. This is my fourth one. And I think it's something that, and we'll get into this. It's one of the reasons why I reached out to Scott. Very similar because this is my fourth scale. And you don't actually see a lot of VPs do multi-scales across multiple different industries. And so that was one of the things that stood out to me about Scott was that was something I was trying to do as well. And so that's what I look when you can create a system and a process that allows you to do things more than one place. And so that's where I'm at now. It's what I'm doing. You know, I have my Patreon, I have my podcast, but really I love, like I said, y'all, I love this. I love this. And this, I believe sales and sales leadership can be the best career in the world if you take it seriously and you really educate yourself on it. And so with that, you know, I think we can talk mentorship. And I can honestly tell you, I would not be where I am today without the mentors I've had in my life, period. And I'm younger than most people realize. And I think that's something that also catches people off guard a little bit is, you know, I'm not by any means going to say I'm the world's greatest VP of sales. I have plenty of learn to grow and to improve, but I don't meet many that are my age that have done what I've done. And a lot of that is because I've been willing to reach out to people smarter than me, better than me, to learn from, right? Like I've quoted this many times. Experience is the slowest way to learn something. Like, why would I want to take 10 years to get good at something if I can learn from someone like Scott who's done it for 10 years? Right? And so that's been something that I know has driven me to where I am now. And it's something that if I could just, everyone needs to get great mentors in their life, but your mentors will change. And I think this is something too that we'll probably get into is like your mentors over time will change. My first true mentor, I can honestly say, changed my life in so many positive ways. And we no longer talk. He changed my life. I would not be here today if I had never met and worked for David Varvaro. Period. He's who got me into reading. He's who handed me Think and Grow Rich. He's who took the risk on a young Black kid who dropped out of college and brought him into a personal training studio and taught me how to run a business. He took that risk on me. He taught me how to educate myself. And I gave everything to this dude. Worked for him for 5 years out of college, 5 years, and found out he was stealing from me the entire time. It broke my goddamn heart. It was the hardest thing like I've ever had to go through because that was like truthfully, like, you know, you can get into psychology and shit. Like I had, you know, issues with my father growing up. So you can imagine too, there was probably some father issues that played into this as well. And like it crushed me, right? But that was my mentor. And he's who guided me to it. But it taught me how powerful mentorship was, right? So who here's read Think and Grow Rich? Has anyone read Think and Grow Rich in here? Yep. Seeing some hands, right? So, oh, there we go. Someone pulled it up quick. Who pulled that up quick? Brian? Hell yeah, dude. He's got it on his desk, right? Like I read it every single year. It's on my bookshelf here. Like it talks about having your board of advisors in there, right? And whether they're real or not, like you have your board of advisors. And that was the first book that David gave me, was that book. And then getting that mindset of having a board of advisors changed my life. And ever since I've always sought out people a little bit further ahead, a little bit smarter, a little bit better than where I was at to learn from. And so that's something that I just think people just don't understand how valuable a great mentor can be. But they also underestimate how much time it takes to find great mentors, right? So when and I learned my lesson too, especially now being on like the mentor side. Like I totally get why Scott didn't respond to my first message. Like I wouldn't probably have responded to my first message. There was nothing of value to it. But the year I was on path to become a VP of sales, I reached out to 5 VPs a week for a year to find mentors. Salespeople, I know we don't love math. Run that math.
That's 250 something.
Scott, I know you're good at math. I was going to try to get all these other people into it. Okay.
I'm trying to help them out because I know they're not good at math.
I'd love to see. I like to make people uncomfortable sometimes, right? Also a sign of a great mentor. Okay. A week, 5 a week for a year to find great mentors. And it's how I got some of my earliest mentors. What a lot of people don't pay attention to is how much work this can be. But two, I don't know if y'all caught this. Like we said, and we joke about it. I messaged Scott once. He didn't respond. Did I stop? No, I went back again because that was someone I wanted to learn from, right? That's someone I wanted to learn from. And like one and done shows me nothing, right? It shows a mentor nothing that if you really want it. And so, like, I just can't stress enough how important mentorship is, but that you have to be willing to reach out to a lot, right? Because I also have messages from people that I reached out to back then that said no. I said no. Sorry, I'm too busy. Sorry, I can't. Sorry, whatever. She said no. All right, great. You know what's funny? It's actually hilarious. Is like every once in a while, I'll get a message from one of those people now, right? Like, hey, like, and they forgot, right? Because LinkedIn saves all the messages, right? So like my message from 2015 or 2016 is still right there, right? And they respond like, yo, I'd love to pick your brain. Oh, really now? Weird, weird how that played out, right? So you really have to be intentional about who you're going after. So this would be one of my other tips on mentors is I have different mentors for different things, right? Like Scott was one of my early mentors on scaling. Like, how do I take this little baby team of 10 and turn it into 75, 80 to 100? I had Dave Brock, who's another one of my close mentors, right? On more high level and strategy. He's the author of the Sales Manager Survival Guide, mandatory reading for my managers. I'd recommend it to all of y'all. He's one of my closest mentors, right? But Dave isn't in the startup world, right? He's in like the bigger companies, the bigger teams, things like that. He takes over companies. So I could learn from him. I had Colin Coggins, who was another Black sales leader. Guess what? There's not a lot of us. There's not. He was one. And I aspire, I was like, I looked to him, right? And I was like, I want to, how did you navigate this? How did you go through this? Here are things that I'm struggling with as a Black man in this industry. Like, how did you go through this? So I had Colin Coggins as a mentor. Kevin Gaither, right? Kevin Gaither, I would say was a mentor of mine. We're still close, but we no longer have a mentor relationship, right? So like these are things where like you have to be intentional about who you're targeting and why. For some of y'all, I'm probably a really bad mentor. I may not have accomplished what you're trying to accomplish. I might be able to give you some insights, but if you're looking for a great mentor who is phenomenal at selling an APAC, that ain't me, homie. It's not me. So you need to be intentional with who you're targeting and why, but they shouldn't all fit the same mold and model, right? So it's being very intentional. One of the reasons why I targeted Scott, because also Scott was like big time then, you know, he had way more followers. He was the LinkedIn thought leader before thought leaders were like,
that's right. I've been all downhill ever since then.
Right. All downhill ever since. But like, you know, like he had done what I wanted to do, which was scale teams, but I wanted to learn how to do it across industries. And I think, Scott, when I reached out to you, like when we finally started to connect, you're at Quality Now. So that was like that was also your fourth build, right? Fourth or fifth build? Sixth build, right?
Sixth.
So
yeah.
I wanted, this is something to remember as you're looking for mentors is you're looking to build the skill set. I wasn't reaching out to Scott so I could be the best VP of sales at Snack Nation. I was reaching out to Scott because I wanted to learn how to make it repeatable no matter where I went. And when I looked at the people out there, there weren't many people that I felt I could model, right? So like it's being intentional with who you want to go after and why. So I'll pause there for a second because I see the chat moving and like there's questions happening, but like
I got.
Okay, well we'll dive into some of the questions here and we'll go back and forth.
I got a bunch. Let's go to Domingo. You got the first question, man.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for providing this forum and for answering our questions. Katie, I'm part of your Patreon, so thank you so much for the content that you post. And Scott, you as well, always have great content. I guess my question is, going back to your original statement, Scott, what do you think are 3 factors that would make a mentor want to work with a mentee? So if I'm approaching a mentor of some sort, what 3 factors would make you say, okay, hey, Mingo, let's work together, or I see that you're providing some sense of value. What do you think of those 3 factors?
Go for it, Katie.
Okay. So actually, I want to start with just one caveat to all of this, because I think it's important to call out. You got to remember, mentors are also what? We are people.
People. Yeah.
We're people, right? So I have a job. I've got a wife. I've got 2 kids. I got a rescue pit bull named Goat. I've got a Patreon. I've got a podcast. I've got so like the first is remembering as a human being, the capacity may not be there regardless of desire.
Mm-hmm.
You follow me here? So like it may not even be a question of if I want to help or not, as much as do I have the capacity to do so. So I do want to call that out, because sometimes we have to say no. One of the people that I wanted as a mentor the most, I don't think will ever mentor me, right? And I've tried 5 times, and it's not because I don't think he wants to, it's because he doesn't have the capacity to do so. Low Tony, in case anybody's wondering who, but Low Tony is someone that I have gone after for a long time to try to have as a mentor. He's a very successful Black venture capitalist now. But if I think about your question though, the first thing is a desire to learn. Second thing is the desire to execute. The third thing is the desire to be I guess not the desire, but the willingness to be uncomfortable. So oftentimes, like when people are seeking out mentorship, really like they're looking for someone to tell them that they're doing the right thing. Like, oh, you're doing great. Keep it up. Good job, buddy. See, that's I don't think this is gonna sound bad, but it is what it is. I don't think Scott and I ever had a comfortable conversation, especially when I was coming. You know, like in fact, they were harsh. There was very rarely like I left going like, all right, like I feel better. But actually, this is the key.
They know that I'm not the most, warm and fuzzy person. They know.
Right. Okay, but I'm gonna change a word. I didn't leave feeling better, but I left knowing I was better. You follow me here? Like, and so we get that twisted sometimes. So the desire to learn. Now, here's the key. This is the next part. Okay, everyone says it. You follow me? Everyone says, oh, like, I really want to learn. Show me what you're already learning. Right? So like, I've been reading this. I've been talking to this person. I've been studying this. Like, I'm hungry to learn. Show me that you already are. Second part, executing. Here's what I'm already executing, right? I'm trying this, I'm testing this, I'm doing this, right? But I'm still struggling. I'm just looking for more guidance. So those are the things that I look for is, do they have a desire to learn? Do they have like a desire to execute and have a history of it? Because like, I'm a tough mentor and I don't know, like I can't see everyone on here. I might have a couple of mentees on this call and they would tell you the exact same thing. It's also the way that Scott mentored me. Like, if you're not going to do it, we're not going to talk. And I've got a very short leash there because I have very short on time, right? So desire to learn, execution, and willing to be uncomfortable, because I'm probably going to ask you to do things that you haven't done before, or to have the tough conversations of like, no, that's not good enough. Let's go. Your friends are there to make you feel good. I'm here to try to make you be good. And that's a very big difference.
That's great.
Thank you.
Whoops. He muted himself. Domingo, you muted yourself.
Sorry. No, I said that. Thank you so much for answering the question. I like the breakdown that you provided. The last point, to your point about being able to feel uncomfortable, I think that's a big one. I think a lot of times as a mentee, you may not want to hear the tough discussion, but to your point, the tough discussions make you better. And when I think about just my own personal mentees, that's how I've grown, is being uncomfortable. So thank you for that breakdown. I appreciate you guys answering the questions.
Yeah.
And
thanks for asking the question, man.
No
There's some real good quotes in there, KD. I wrote down 2 that I'll share with everybody. And this is one of the things that I do is like a personal quirk of mine that you might all not know. But I take notes like a motherfucker all the time. I write down shit see, look at this dude.
Mm-hmm.
See?
Yep.
I'm sure at some point we talked about this. I don't remember if we have, but I write down notes all the time. And I wrote down 2 things that Kevin said. Experience is the slowest way to learn something. That just like hit me. That was a big one right there. And then I kind of paraphrased this one a little bit and kind of made it tweet worthy. But I wrote, worry less about feeling better and more about leaving better, which was more or less what he said. Those were two big takeaways for me that I thought were great. That was a great answer, Katie. Eric Davidek, I'm going to go to you in Antarctica. Give it to us.
Hey guys. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And I think this kind of dovetails with my question, Kevin. I recall from your last time here, you busted out your old binder with, the yellowed pages from years ago that had everything in it. And Scott's mentioned that as well. That's admittedly not a strength of mine. So I'm curious about when you seek out mentors as a mentee, maybe it's situational, but do you look for people who are complementary to your skills? Like if you're trying to level up, or people who are the flip side of that coin and might challenge you to get better at things that you're not great at?
Really good question.
So I look at what they've achieved, but the only way I can find out if they're complimentary or not is I have to earn the right for the conversation, right? So like when I was reaching out to Scott, I didn't know if we were going to be aligned or not. I thought we might be, but I didn't know, right? And so I would say Scott and I have a really good like 80-20 relationship. I think 80% we're pretty aligned on. And there's 20% that we have differences, sometimes strong differences. And we have had these conversations before as well. And that's okay. So I don't necessarily seek out like people that are going to be either called like complementary or contradictory, as much as have they achieved what I'm trying to achieve? And if they have, great. Now, when I get into that conversation, though, there are definitely people that I reached out to for mentorship that I declined after getting to know them, right? Because they did things that were against my personal values, right? They weren't the type of leader I wanted to be, even though they had achieved the things that I wanted to achieve, right? And then that's when I cancel it and say, hey, like this isn't what, whether the way they led their people, how they talked about their people, doing shady sales tactics, right? Things like that, I didn't want to do. And so then I didn't keep those relationships, right? So that's how I look for it. Have they achieved? Yes. Eventually though, and this is the thing too with mentorship, it's not a silver bullet, right? They might tell you things that you disagree with. It doesn't mean you have to do it. It just gave you another data point to work with and to try. So I hope that kind of answers the question there. Like it's really, and actually I think this is why it's starting to buzz up a little bit more now is y'all have more access to us now. And you have more, y'all, for some of y'all, you've maybe never heard of me before, never seen me before, like whatever. For those that have, even if we've never engaged, you probably have a decent feel for what I'm like. You know what I'm saying? Like you have a decent feel for who I might be based on what I post and what I put out there. And so that gives you a feel too, right? Like if I were like going after Scott now for mentorship, like he has so much more stuff out there now. I have a way better feel of like who he is as a person. I'm like, okay, this is someone I want to learn from. So I hope that answers that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a great question. Okay, we've got Jessica Knight. Jessica, you take yourself off mute.
Yep. Hey, it's Jessica Kite here. Hi, Scott. Hi, Kitty. Question for you. When you were saying that you were reaching out to 5 VPs per week, did you come at them from an aspect of, hey, I'm looking for mentorship, or did you just ask for, to chat with them first? I guess I just kind of want to know how that rolled out. I know what you said about Scott, like how you approach Scott, but I mean, when you've done it 260 times, you might have a method that is repeatable and that works.
Let me see. I'm gonna see if I can pull up some screenshots here. But yes, so what I found worked, and why the first time it didn't work for Scott and where it eventually got to, was one, giving a reason why. So why I was looking for a mentorship and why I wanted mentorship from them. This is why the "can I pick your brain" didn't do anything, right?
That's
Because
right.
one, very selfish. Like, I look back at that, that's a very selfish ask of me. Hey,
Well,
can I
looking
pick
back
your
on it
brain?
now, it's like cringeworthy probably now.
Yeah,
Looking
like
back on
I
it.
completely regret it, right? Like, I've never
Yeah.
blamed you for not answering. I just remind you that you did it. That's all, right?
That's fair.
So, right. So one, it's like, hold on, I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback here.
I think Eric M is
I got
not
him.
on mute.
I
Our
got
girlfriend.
him.
Okay.
I can't find Eric M. So if
I
you're
fo-
here,
I found it.
mute yourself.
I found it.
all right.
So it was giving a reason why mentorship and why them, right? And so if I look back at, how I messaged Scott, like, hey, like, I'm looking for mentorship. Why? 'Cause I'm a first-time VP. I'm a first-time VP, and I'm looking for mentorship. For you, I can tell you've done it well. Congrats on opening another office in Austin, right? By the way, like with him, it worked. Like, by the way, I'm working with a former employee of yours, so it's a little bit of a hook there. But I have a look at like
Totally.
my message to Colin. Very sounds like, I'm a first-time VP. I'd really like to learn from you. I can tell by your experience XYZ that you're someone I could really learn from, and I'd love. And so that it was turning the message into like reason, right? And weird how this also follows very similar to any sales methodology, right?
Yeah.
Research, relevancy, call to action. And so that's how the message evolved. The very early on of like, hey, I want to pick your brain. No shit, that's probably why I had to reach out to 250, because nobody was going to respond to that. As I started to personalize those messages and the two whys, why I wanted mentorship and why them, that was the best formula I found for response rates and for positive response.
Can I just dovetail one question real quick, Scott? So out of the 260, 250 people in a year that you got, how many responses did you get? And then did you end up with like 5 or 10 mentors, or did you nail it down to, because I know you said that you had mentors for different things, like Scott was for scaling. And I know some of them probably weren't perfect deliveries. So how many at the end of the year did you end up with that you ended up working with at one time? So you're not getting all crazy.
6.
6 at one time. Okay.
So I ended that year with 6 mentors. I spoke to probably close to, say, about 30 to 40 people that I ended up having conversations with. And then I also had more responses than 30, but like call it 35-ish positive responses. From there, I had, the conversations. I'd say from those 35 conversations, I had like 10 to 12 that I thought were going to be mentors. And then it kind of whittled its way down to 5 or 6 ongoing. Like, those are the people I was just name dropping, right? That I'm either still in. I was just texting Colin last week because his mug showed up on the LA Techstars like demo day, right? So I'm taking a screenshot, sending it off to him like, yo, you've lost weight, good shit. So it's like, oh, I gotta start cussing. I know there's kids listening, my bad. But it was like over 250 messages to 35 conversations to 10 to 11-ish like potential mentors to like 5, like really like 6 like core that I've stayed in touch with ever since.
Okay. Awesome. So I don't want to monopolize, but so did you work with them all at one time though? Like that's because I'm just thinking then you're maybe getting diverging views, and sometimes it's, it can be more confusing or worse. And that'll be my last question, Scott. Sorry. Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay.
No, so that actually part of that is actually the point, right? So very rarely should you follow anybody blindly, right? And so I actually wanted different points of views. I 100% would pit them against each other and they didn't know it,
Okay. Okay.
right? Because I wanted to look for patterns and consistency, right? So if I go to Scott and say, hey, how do you manage managers? And Scott gives me an answer. And then I go to Colin and say, hey, how do you manage managers? And Colin gives me an answer. And then so in a way, like I was actually looking for one, what are the patterns and consistencies? Because if 3 of them say it, cool. If I get 3 different ideas, now I got 3 things to test and see which one works for me. So it's okay to get differing views. It's actually the beauty of having multiple mentors.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for letting me ask multiple questions.
Yeah, thank you, Jessica. Let's go to my guy, Dale. Dale Zwinski.
Hey, what's going on, Scott? What's going on, KD?
What up?
Hey, 2 questions. One super simple. Well, I think it's super simple, but I get this question all the time when I mentor and coach. What's the difference between mentoring and coaching? Is the first question. And I think of it more like mentoring versus like executive coaching. And then the other side is how are you guys doing this mentorship stuff at scale? Like I think it's super hard. You talked about a couple of the pitfalls already. I've helped a couple of organizations spin up mentorship programs, and it's just at scale is super hard. So there you go.
So I guess the first point of like mentoring versus coaching or executive coaching, I almost feel like truthfully, like the biggest difference I see there is a cost. Like mentoring, I don't charge for mentoring, but you also don't get as much, right? Like I can't give you as much time, right? Like I just can't, right? Whereas with coaching or executive coaching, like they're generally speaking, like there's a cost involved there, which allows for either more time or getting more into the weeds on certain things. That's kind of how because like what the feedback I'm giving and the questions that I ask, like if I have any mentees on here or former mentees, like they know, like I ask a shit ton of questions, and so I'm going to ask the same questions and I'm going to give probably some of the same advice, but I've actually had to give this feedback to mentees before of like, yo, like you can't just keep throwing things on my calendar. Like, I'm sorry, I love you, but you can't just grab time whenever you feel like it. We need to have this be at a regular cadence. So I think that's the difference I view there. In terms of at scale, so for myself, I can't scale mentorship, but I've really tried to scale impact and insight. Like that's why I do what I do on LinkedIn. It's why I started the Patreon. It's why I work on courses, because I can't mentor everyone, but I really try to give the insights that I can to people to kind of bridge that gap within companies. And I'm very curious on Scott's feedback on this. I have dabbled with all sorts of different internal mentorship programs and just have rarely seen them have the impact that I want them to have. Like, that's just like, I've tried a bunch of different ways to do it, but
what's failed? Like so what's been the challenge?
Well,
I mean, I understand the challenge, but I'm curious where you see it failing.
Well, I guess where I see it failing is what's the goal of it? What's the goal of having mentorship? If you're going to do mentorship within a company, what's the goal?
That's a good question.
So,
I think it's different for every company. So
right.
I think you have to define the goal before you can do it.
Right. So if I look at the goals of establishing a mentorship program within a company, I would look at faster ramp times. I would look at higher NPS scores. I would look at better retention, right? People stay longer. I would look at higher quota attainment, right? I'd look at even like just positive feedback from the mentors or mentees, just call it overall morale, right? I would get some of it, not all of it, and it'd be very short-lived. Because oftentimes within companies, even if people volunteer, it's still a little bit of forced mentorship. right? Like, all right, new employee, your mentor is Kevin. And it's like this forced mentorship, this forced like relationship that I don't always believe is best. So I've tried, I still think it's an idea. I just haven't found a way to, I feel, have an impact that I could point to and say, this is working, right? Like that the reps are getting what they need out of it.
But maybe the problem is you're trying to force it inside the organization. Maybe mentorship is better structured outside of your typical like reporting relationship.
Yes. So I do so anytime a rep or a manager or a director is like, hey, I'm looking for mentorship. Anytime someone asks me, immediately into my network, right? Immediately into my network, and I find people to mentor them. That what I could not agree more there. But the first step was someone asking for it.
Yeah, for sure.
When they ask for it, it seems to work. Giving someone a mentor doesn't seem to work as well.
Yeah, because it's almost like anything. Like you have to be wanting the mentorship, or else it is a forced activity. So if they're not willing to do the work, like if you're not going to grind and do the work and like do what your mentor is saying, and like one of the big things, as you were talking about, is coachability, and it's one of my top 3 when I look to hire a salesperson. Like you got to be coachable, and if you're not coachable, you're not going to last long in my team, because like the reality is I need to be coachable as well. Like I got to learn from you and from like above and below. And if the people inside the organization aren't coachable, it's not going to work.
Yeah. No, the mentorship at scale, Dale, is it's a conversation that we've been having for a while. And I don't want to make it sound like we have it all figured out. But it's something that we're actively working on, right? It's something. How does KD scale KD? How does Scott scale Scott? Some of the things that we do in terms of our accessibility, in terms of just responding to people, whether it's DMs on LinkedIn or emails or text messages or whatever, or putting ourselves out there, having these Patreon groups, having these podcasts, having these training events, sharing everything, that has worked for us and trying to pass it on, having a handful of mentees that we are invested in and trying to help, develop and kind of, send the elevator back down to, testing out all sorts of platforms and medium and methods of getting information into, the public's hands. These are all things that we're trying to solve for and sort out. And it feels a little bit like, the next horizon, if you will. Something that we're actively working on. And one thing that I'd kind of point out, they talk about the future of sales being, co-selling and kind of working, together. I wonder if the future of mentorship at scale is partnering up, linking up, working on things and collaborating with people that you are simpatico with and like-minded, and you've done some things with and trust implicitly. So there's an element of that, I think, as well.
Yeah, just like John just said, this is mentorship at scale. We have about 63 people here. Everyone's kind of listening in. I mean, the way I look at it is these micro communities and Patreon groups and all these micro sales groups that are popping up. Like you find the ones that you fit into, and either you fit in and have conversations or you don't. And if you don't engage, if you don't engage, you're never going to get what you like. If you don't participate, you're not going to get what you need. So,
yeah. Great. Good question.
I want to say one thing there too, to build off just what you said, Scott, like back to the Think and Grow Rich example, right? That board of directors, if you spend enough time with Scott, if you read his books, if you are in Thursday Night Sales, if you're on these calls here, before making a decision, if you paused for a second and said, what would Scott do in this situation? You'd be shocked at how it starts to guide your decision makings. Just taking that pause, right? So like my own managers, you could ask them this. I encourage them all the time. WWKDA. WWKDA. What do you think that stands for? Who's got it?
What would KD ask?
What would KD ask? Not what would KD do. What would KD ask? Right, Gabrielle? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I see.
So yeah, I got
There
two.
she
I was
is.
like, listen, I gotta talk to KD, and then Scott, I got something for you, please.
Scott, will you? Yes, Gabby, I will.
That's it.
Okay. So, but like what would KD ask, right? If y'all took that pause, right? If you've consumed enough of my content, taking that pause to ask that will start to steer your behavior, which is, by the way, the goal of a mentor is to steer your behavior, right? So those are things to work to. So, all right, what's up, Sastrus? What are we diving into?
Oh,
We're going to. Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Gabby, you don't get to cut the line, Gabby, just because you're trying to.
I was just gonna say, I was like,
podcast.
I didn't have
this
any-
podcast. Hold on, Gabby. We got a cue. Hold on. I gotta go to Jose Lobo in Costa Rica, KD. This is a local. This is our boy in Costa Rica. Gabby, I won't forget you. I got you coming. I want to go to Jose.
Pura vida.
Hey, Katie. Hey, Scott. Thank you for letting me ask the question. And sorry if my English is not that good.
No, it's perfect, man. It's really good.
So my question is, how did your initial mentor search started? I'm an SDR, the second SDR of the current company I work at, and I report to the VP of marketing. So I say this because I feel like there's no one internally in my company that I can reach out to for mentorship. I really connect with people, but they cannot mentor me on my current role. So I see a lot of like LinkedIn people talking a lot in LinkedIn, but I don't know if they're legit or not. So how do you differentiate between the people you should really follow and maybe pay for their mentorship, like we're currently doing here, and people that are not like interesting to you, at least at the initial stage?
Great question.
So great question. So one, look for people that are one step ahead. So if you're an SDR now, look for AEs that just got promoted from SDR, right? So you're looking just one step ahead, and many of them will not and should not be charging for their mentorship, right? So you're looking one step ahead, but to get a gauge is review their content. What are they posting? What are they talking about? What are people talking about them? Look at their recommendations, right? Have people been writing them recommendations of how they were in that previous job, right? So I'd look at who's one step ahead. Where am I trying to be? Because also too, Scott, I'm sure you get this. I'll have SDRs reach out to me for mentorship. Now, can I mentor an SDR? I can. But I'm about 6 layers past where they're trying to get to next, which is AE. So this is where you want to try to round it out well, is like, okay, where are you trying to get to next? Find mentors there. And that's the beauty of LinkedIn now, is you can see what they're posting. You can see what they're saying. And I'd go from there. So one step ahead, review their content, review their recommendations. But like we said at the beginning, have the conversations, right? If you reach out to enough, you'll get 30 to 40 conversations, and you'll find the ones that you feel like vibe with and you can learn from. Because trust me when I say I spoke to many of people that even back then, I was like,
yeah,
I can't learn from you. Like, you got lucky. So we don't have a conversation here. So that's something to remember as well.
Cool. All right. Shoot your shot, Gabby. Go, girl.
I honestly, when you asked me like, Sass, just what's up? I'm like, oh, I just wanted to interrupt and then like quickly back into the background. But no, if there was one question I was going to ask, because someone had already mentioned, I think it was Dale's question asking about scaling mentorship, specifically internally. One of the things that we're doing at Gaunt, I'm going to give some context. I'll ask a question. So we moved from a one-to-one pairing from SDRs and AEs to now a round robin model. There's always a challenge of like, hey, like how are SDRs going to get insight into what AEs are doing? We present this mentorship program between AEs and SDRs where AEs can opt in to be mentors for SDRs. It's an idea right now, but what I'm really curious about, because you mentioned like there are some initial intentions, but never felt like you got to realize the impact that you were trying to realize. How are you measuring that throughout to ensure whether or not you're moving in the right direction or the not so right direction?
So results and surveys.
Okay.
Right. So one, I look at, okay, what do I believe is the goal of this mentorship program? Say it's for a new hire mentorship, right? Like it's a new hire. Okay. Well, what do I expect to happen from this? I would expect them to have positive feedback on the mentorship program. I would expect them to say they learned a lot from their mentor. I expect them to say they feel more connected with the organization because of their mentor. I would expect some of that to roll over potentially into their actually ramping results, right? And so I would survey reps after 30 and 60 days. And there'd be questions kind of in there about their mentors. And the feedback was never like overwhelmingly strong. Same thing with the mentors, following up with them, saying, hey, how did it go? When's the last time you talked to your mentee? You know, like there are things in there that I'd follow up with to see how do I think it's going. And, you know, I think it was Dale that asked the question earlier. It's like, it almost felt like even if people had volunteered for it, there was still just that at some point it becomes a forced mentorship or relationship. Now, what I do though, to the point like you're talking about, is I do have AE tribal trainers.
Okay.
And so they are not mentors, they are trainers. And so that is something they get certified on, and they are a part of teaching SDRs the AE role that's going to come to them, right? But that's all they're responsible for, right? Julia is teaching discovery, and she runs those modules, right? Brad is teaching the follow-up. So I have tribal trainers, but I don't have like that one-to-one mentor relationship where, because also here's the other part, whether he wants to admit it or not, I'm pretty sure Scott cares about me as a person.
Come on, man.
I know he does. I know he does. I know he does.
You know,
that
I love
also, you know, and Dale, actually, as I say this out loud, I think that's one of the differences too. Like a coach, more results, mentor also cares about the person. Right. And that's where I think the
human being. Yeah.
I would say almost probably, if not 50-50, 60-40, like business and life are where Scott and my conversations go now. So I think that's how I look at it, Gabby, is like, I love coaching from AEs to SDRs. I love that. The mentorship, right? That caring about the person.
Yeah.
That's where I think it falls off a little bit. So that's what I think, that's how I would define it or look at it differently.
Awesome. Thank you. And if I can have a follow-up question, when you were rolling out the mentorship program, was there any kind of like, you talked about there being a certification for your tribal trainers. Was there any kind of enablement and training for mentors within this?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've had like, and this, by the way, this is almost 12 years running now that I've tried to roll these types of programs out. It's not just at Patient Pop. I've had guided sessions on the types of questions to ask, get to know me sessions, right? Like at one point I had like new reps like fill out kind of like a get to know me like survey of like basic shit, like what's your favorite color? What's your favorite music genre? Like what's your dream place to go for vacation? Like all these sort of questions. And it was on the mentor to help pull in fun, motivating things across the year around it. Like I've tried a lot of different things and I just haven't And by the way, I'm not done trying. I'm not done trying. I just haven't found it yet. And I wouldn't want to tell y'all that I have.
Gabby, you there? I didn't mute you. I didn't do it.
Just
Damn
muted.
you and your
Oh,
purple
I
pink
was
light.
so
I
like,
didn't do
okay,
it.
okay. Listen, I hop on. I started paying for the Patreon group, and this is how you treat me?
Power move. Just a power move. Hey, Gabby, you have something to say?
Light.
Muted.
Lighten me up.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question, Gabby.
Thanks,
Mute.
Katie.
Yeah.
All right, she's good. She's good. All right, we got Vlad. Vlad, are you here? You here still, big guy? Vancouver.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Katie.
Hey, buddy.
Great to have you here. Thanks for coming.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we actually had a lot of snow as well over the weekend. So you guys are not alone. It's not very usual for Vancouver to have that much snow. Anyways, well, the question I had, you mentioned that you would be working with, 6 mentors at the same time. How do you know, and you also mentioned that one of them, you don't even stay in touch with one of them. How did you know that it was time for that mentorship relationship to be over? And was it where you couldn't learn anything from that person, or you've moved at the same level where it wasn't, and it wasn't really a friendship, it was truly a mentorship relationship?
So
Appreciate that.
phenomenal question. So
Like a
if I
breakup
look-
email for mentors, Katie.
Mhm. Yeah. So the breakup email for mentors isn't really that hard, right? It's like a, hey, thank you. This has been amazing. I hope to stay in touch, right? Like, just like, by the way, with any breakup, any firing, the more details you try to give, the worse it gets, right? So, but at the core of it, when you start to realize either one, you're not learning, or two, they don't actually live by what they are telling you, right? And so I had a mentor who told me to do some things. And guess what? I did them. And guess what? They worked. And then guess what? They're like, hey, could you show me how you're doing that? I'm like, wait, I learned this from you.
Wait, you taught me.
Like, you told me to do this, right? And so when they aren't living it, or when they start to miss calls, or they start to not follow up, right? And so that's when, like, this also, by the way, is when you can tell it was a real mentorship. I'm gonna keep coming. Like, I love the question that Dale asked. If it just ends, it means they were more of a coach than they were a mentor, because that personal connection to you is not there, right? So I think Scott and mine's relationship, Colin and mine's relationship, even a few other people I can mention, is very similar. Like, it got to a certain point where our conversations weren't so much of like, how did you do this thing, versus like, what haven't we tried? Like, what haven't we done? What's a problem neither one of us has solved, and let's figure it out. But then also too, like, shit, like the amount of like check-in texts and conversations I've had with Scott over the past 2 years, right? I mean, we've obviously known each other for way longer than 2 years, but I just look at those last 2 years, also shows me he was a true mentor. Nothing to do with, hey, KD, how's pipeline right here? It's like, yo, Katie, like, how are you dealing with life right now? Right. And so that to me is where there was sometimes of a difference. The people that I stopped learning from, that I've stayed in touch with, I would still consider strong mentors. But if I'm not learning anything anymore and they're not checking in on me as an individual, that's okay. And you write the breakup there. And I think that's perfectly fine. But you're going to find, y'all, like, I think Justin Welsh posted it. But I think he actually might have got it from somewhere else, I've found out. But like, the people that you admire are still figuring it out.
Yeah.
And I love that quote, because trust me, y'all, there's a term for this. If someone knows what I'm talking about, throw it in the chat. But like the reality shattered, right? Like, people that I aspired to learn from, and I finally get to talk to them, or I finally get to like get into it. And it's just, there's a phrase for this, but it's like deflating. You're like, oh, like I thought you were here and you weren't. And that's okay. So I hope that answers. I kind of danced around there a little bit, but it's like, one, letting a mentor know, like, hey, like, thank you. And like, this is the key too. Very similar to, I think, who asked the question earlier? I think it was Jessica asked the question of like, why you want the mentorship. Telling them what you achieved because of it's valuable. Like, truthfully, it's one of the hardest parts I think about being a mentor is we're so far from the results. Like, we don't get to see it. We hope it's happening, but we don't get to. Like, tell me, like, hey, KD, this was awesome. Here's what I learned from you, and here's how I implemented it. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. I'll never forget it. Done. Right? So like that's how I'd approach the breakup. But too, like you can tell. So like like I said, my original mentor, who I haven't spoken to now in 8 years, that was a very different breakup. Very different breakup there. Because again, that was back to an integrity thing that I just couldn't get over.
Thanks for the question, Vlad.
I guess it's very similar to like just dating relationships, right? So if the energy is sort of like fading away, then it's time to sort of go.
And I do want to call this out though. Whose job is it to keep the relationship alive? I do want to be very clear.
Yes, the mentor or the mentee. Whose job is it? The mentor or the mentee?
We got who's copping out with the both? Get out of here, Sastras.
There's a lot of mentees. A couple reciprocals, mostly mentee.
Okay.
What do you say, Kevin? What do you say?
I lean at the mentee. To keep the relationship going, it is your responsibility. There we go. Jacqueline just nailed it. Whoever asked for it. Because I saw it earlier in the hell yeah, Nick. Dude, celebrate. Like I said something earlier, like that mentors had reached out to them. Hell yeah, that's great. Then it's on them to maintain that relationship. But like, I shouldn't have to seek you out to get time with you as your mentor. Now, I will twice. I actually have a hard rule on this. Like to Scott's thing about taking notes, I take notes. If I have to seek you out twice to get time, it ends. I am going to invest in you because if I take you on as a mentee, I do care about you and I want to see your success. But if I reach out, if I have to chase you down to get time with you to help you grow, I don't feel you're as invested in this as I am. And so, like, sorry, but not sorry.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Let's go to Hayden. Hayden, can you take yourself off mute?
Yeah. Hey, Katie, thank you. And I think you started going down where I was going to ask a question, and it's kind of a tee off of Vlad's, but you find value in the relationship you have with that mentor. You think things are going well, but like you were talking about earlier, that the kind of the coach versus the mentor, that it's free. How many times do I need to nag that mentor if, they have priorities, they have life going on, and I'm trying to stick on them once a month or whatever, and they keep pushing off. And I'm trying to stay on top of them because I do value that relationship when I get them. But if 3, 4, 5 months goes on and it doesn't make any more sense, when do I break it off and look for someone else?
So I'm gonna cop out here slightly and say it depends, right? How long do you think I would be willing to have meetings pushed out from Mark Cuban or Elon Musk? Right? Like if like you follow me here, so like there's certain places where, like, for example, I just told you I've been chasing low for 5 years. 5 years. And I'm not done, right? Because I truly believe I can learn from him and learn some new things. But if it is someone that either you don't feel like you're getting much from, or you just don't feel as invested in it, and you can go find someone that is, then I think you can make that call or draw that line in the sand. So it's a little bit of a cop out, but it's like, if you really, really, really believe you can learn from someone, you deal with it, right? You deal with it. You deal with the BS, you deal with the rescheduling and whatever else, because you can learn from it. If it's not someone you feel you're really learning from, or not someone that's really accomplished what you want to accomplish, There are plenty of people out there. And that's one thing too that I think LinkedIn has, I think how I want to phrase this the right way. There are more people not on LinkedIn that are great than people that are.
Ooh, shots fired.
Okay. Like, sorry. Like, and so they don't have to be the thought leader on LinkedIn. Right. And by the way, this is me talking to you as a thought leader, whatever the hell, whatever the hell that means. Right. But I'm in touch with a decent chunk of these people. Right. Just because they're posting a lot doesn't matter. Right. And so like, you got to find the ones that also like like this is something like that I'm working on, right? Like eventually, right? So this is a perfect example. Eventually, I want to become a founder. That's one of my career goals. So what kind of people do you think I'm reaching out to right now for mentorship? Founders.
Multiple
right?
levels above. Multiple levels above.
Exactly. Who has done multiple exits, ideally bootstrapped, in an industry that I'm thinking of targeting, right? That I'm going to that next level to learn. So that's how I look at it is, chase them down. If you can learn, chase them. But if you can find other people that aren't posting a lot, right? Like this is the example I was giving with like founders, like I can go look up who's getting acquired. I don't care if they're posting on LinkedIn or not, because what did they do? They got acquired. And I want to learn from the people that got acquired. That's how I look at it as well. It doesn't have to be in like LinkedIn only world or appear to be great.
Kevin, that's great. No, thank you. I agree. I like your point about it. It depends on how much value that mentor is providing and are you going to put up with it? So that's great. Thanks.
Good stuff, Hayden. Let's go over to Catherine Robles from Vanilla Soft. Catherine, are you here still?
Hey, Scott.
Be brave.
Yeah.
Be brave,
Be
my lady.
brave.
Be brave. Be brave.
Well, that's the thing. So that's where I was actually,
brave.
my question was how to feel okay asking, because where I really struggle, and it has happened with Scott a couple of times, is one, how to ask, when to ask. I don't want to sound clueless, yet I always feel that's the way that it's received, because obviously my question is something basic compared to what you could be living at that point. So that's where, honestly, for me, making that connection in terms of really making it a mentorship relationship is so hard. It's just what type of questions, how to get to those questions. I'm totally fine relating and building on the relationship, as getting to know each other, but getting advice in the things that I'm supposed to be doing at work somehow questions my ability to just do my work. I don't know how to find that balance. Like, where do you start, kind of thing?
This is a very real thing, KD, from a lot of folks, and I can tell you from like at least my perspective, from like a mentor perspective, it's sometimes hard to relate to, because I'm like, what are you talking about? Just ask the question, shoot your shot. Who cares? Be fearless. And it's hard for me to kind of go back a few steps and put myself in a position of being scared and being nervous. And it's very, very, I mean, I'm looking at the chat, but even just in my own like messages and emails and DMs and texts, like I get this all the time. So it's a great question from Catherine, Kevin.
So there's a few things I want to touch on here. And one is a quote I recently got from a book called Think Like a Monk by Jay Shetty. And what he talks about is he says, fear is actually not a bad thing. The problem is we fear the wrong things. So as opposed to afraid of looking incompetent, I want you to be afraid of not learning. Right? We fear the wrong things. If your fear was, I'm afraid I'm not going to learn, now your default action is to reach out. Right? But when we fear how we look, it means we are focused on ourself and not the other person. Right? So the first thing is I want you to try to shift your language to like being afraid of not learning, being afraid of not having the conversation, being afraid of trying to do it on your own. That's where the fear should lie, which then should push you to take the overall action. The second that I think is very important here is I can't remember, learning is an invisible endeavor. You look bad until you don't. No matter what it is, no matter what you are learning, you look bad at it until you don't. And so, and also too, I think, people have talked like, how do you find the right mentor? Anybody that judges you for asking a type of question that you're asking, should that let you know about them as a mentor?
Not the right one, probably.
Right? Like, hey, like, and by the way, do you think I got some negative responses to like, hey, like I'm a first-time VP, I'm really trying to learn? You don't think maybe I got a few like, I didn't have a mentor, figured out on your own?
Did you get a couple of those? You for real got a couple of those?
Absolutely. More than a couple.
Wow.
More than a couple, right? Why should I spend my time with you when I have my own things to worry about? Why would I want to make you better? You're going to compete with me down the road. Like you get all of that, right? So the point here is, one, it's a filtering device, right? Catherine, like how they respond back to you should let you know how they would be as a mentor. But taking that, it's embracing it. I was reaching out because I was willing to admit I didn't know. I was willing to admit, I was saying, hey, I'm a first-time VP. I want to learn. I don't know what I'm doing. I was more afraid to not learn than I was of the rejection, because I believed if I could get 5, 6, 10 people helping me learn, I'd be better, right? So now I do want to share this because Scott and I have talked about this. We all face imposter syndrome at some point in time.
Yeah.
All of us. Before I launched my Patreon group for a whopping $10, I was texting, I was like, and I've closed $1 million contracts by myself.
Kevin, they're also paying $10 to be here.
Okay. All right. So texting Scott, like, it was a group text at like 11 o'clock at night.
11 o'clock at night. Yes. 11 o'clock something at night. Yes.
Basically being like, okay, y'all, this is going live tomorrow. I don't need y'all to do anything. I'm just telling you so I don't back out. Like, like that fear was there, right? Of like, how is this going to be received? And that's, this was something that's me. That's me, like afraid to put something out there for $10, right? And I was afraid. 3 weeks later, guess when I got a text message from Scott? The same idea, like, dude, like, why is this so stressful? Like, why are we so afraid to put this out here? So we all go through it. It's just, you go through it and you start to learn, what's the weird acronym? Fear is what? False expectations appearing real. I think it's something along those lines, right? Like most of what we fear in life never actually happens. Right? And that would be my encouragement here is, one, I look at it, I can't remember, I think Domingo asked it, what do I look for in a mentee? Someone who wants to learn. So you reaching out already shows me what? You want to learn. It's okay, right? There are many calls I got off early on with Scott where I felt stupid. I'm like, damn it, why didn't I know that? I didn't leave. I wasn't there to feel better. I was there to get better. And that was the goal. So that'd be my encouragement, Catherine, is like, one, understand you're reaching out to humans. They have insecurities too. We all do. Two, like, embrace not knowing. Lean into that. You're messaging to get better. Hey, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know. And I want to know. And I think I can learn from you. And here's why. Right? So once you start to do that, I think the taking action becomes a habit. It doesn't mean the fear goes away, but it's just making sure like, hey, what am I actually afraid of? Am I afraid of rejection, or am I afraid of not being as great as I could have been? That's what drives me is I want to be as good as I
It's a
possibly
great quote.
can, more than I'm afraid of the rejection or looking stupid. Because I've looked stupid many a time. So just best believe that.
Cool.
Hey,
Yeah,
Katie.
no,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Catherine.
no, I was just gonna say, like, I get it. And yeah,
Well, if
I mean,
you
like,
get
I
it,
keep on
Catherine, if you get it, there's not much left for the KDs or the Scotts of the world to do. 'Cause if you get it, you have to take the next step. You have to do it.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
can't we can't force you. Once you get it, you have to take the action. There's nothing else to learn.
So here's what I can do though. I just screenshotted you, Catherine. I don't know if we know
Yeah,
each
we
other.
can
Now.
pester you.
I just screenshotted you. I got your first name and your last name. I'm
That's
gonna follow
my
up in
first
a
name
week.
and my last name.
There we go.
Yeah,
I'm
now
gonna
you-
follow
now you're
up
getting
in a
pestered.
week and say, hey, did you reach out to 10 people?
Exactly.
Reach out to 10 people. Right? This literally just happened with someone else you might all know that I am texting on a daily basis to say, did you reach out to 10 people, talking to them about some of the value you can provide to them? Right? And like I've had to coach her through it as well. Right? We
Yeah.
all face it, but it eventually was like, either you're going to do it or not. 10 by Friday. 10 by Friday. So I'm going to shoot you a note Friday. See if you did your 10.
That's accountability, Catherine. It's accountability.
Yeah. And I love it. I love it. Katie, hey, thanks. Really, many times all you need is just that gentle push to really kind of jump all the way to the deep end. Yeah, I mean, like you guys said it. It's all about just getting it into action and really going ahead and getting out of that, box that I've put myself in and finding those connections. So thanks. Appreciate it.
So here's one of my favorite quotes, and I love to drop quotes. Is my favorite one. And I think it applies perfectly to this. Worry is a waste of imagination. I want you to write that down real quick. Worry is a waste of imagination. We have this amazing brain that we can control to picture things the way that we want to. If you're going to imagine, why not also imagine some good shit happening? Why not also create an amazing future? Why not see shit going well for once, right? Like worry is a waste of imagination. We've got this amazing brain. It's one of the few things that separates us from all the other animals is we can picture out and create futures in our head. Why not just dabble in some fun shit for once? Damn it, cussing in front of the kids again. All right, why not dabble with like, wow, like, what if I reach out to these mentors and they all say yes? What if I get the one mentor out of 10? What if I find my Scott Lease? Right? Like, let yourself imagine some good for a little bit too, and that also can help push through it. So you'll see a note from me on Friday. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, let's go to Zach Selch. King, or at least Duke of the global sales world. Are you here still, Zach?
Yeah, how you doing? I was
There he is.
not anticipating this, Scott.
I got you, buddy. I got you. You just got to be patient with me.
But I didn't ask a question.
Yeah, you did. You need me to spend a couple minutes going back through the chat to
You
find
know what?
the
I'm
question?
sorry. I did. Yeah, but I okay. I'm sorry. I was passing over to other people. But my question, I guess, was, shoot, it was basically, I'm really sorry. It was when you decided to leave people who were your mentors. I was looking at it sort of like people the only mentors I've had that approached me because they worked with me. They mentored me while they worked with me, and then we sort of drifted apart.
Fell out. Yeah, you drifted apart. Yeah.
But we never had a falling out. It was just sort of like I wasn't putting money in their pocket anymore, and it ended, right?
That's that coach mentality versus mentor mentality, maybe, that we were talking about.
Yeah.
You're not putting money in my pocket anymore. Do you matter
Right.
to me?
And I like the, you have a totally different look at it. And I wish I had this, and I've worked with people, but I was sort of, I guess you had already discussed this before in the past few minutes, but it was sort of like, how did you end your relationship? And you sort of talked about this, it sounds amiable. You just sort of walked away, right? So I'm sorry, I sound like a fool here. I asked my question like half an hour ago, and I wasn't really expecting to get called on. I'm sorry.
No, you're good, man. You're good here. So there's a few parts of this, right? So like, if someone reaches out to you to mentor, right? We kind of covered that, right? It's like, it's kind of on them to maintain that, right? If they should. But I have mentees now that used to work for me that I still stay in touch with very regularly, right? Melissa Liu, senior manager over at Service Titan. I mentored her before she joined Service Titan, eventually got her to Service Titan, left Service Titan, still mentor her. Michael Tuso, Chili Piper, Sean Gentry, Outreach, Austin Wilson, GovTech, right? These are people that like used to work for me years ago, right? That I still, but again, I reach out just as much as they do. Why? Because I care. Like, I want to know that they are succeeding, right? So I think that's important. But for a mentor relationship, like mentee relationship, where it's like, it's kind of meeting its end, oftentimes, just like any relationship, both sides know. Right? Like, both sides know. Like, this sounds so dramatic. When I've fired a mentor, it's never been a, what? But I thought things were going so well. Like, it's like, hey, yeah. Like, outside, like, I talked about what happened with my original mentor. Every other mentor that I have either broken up with or grown apart from has ended in the exact same way. It was them saying, you're right, KD, you're ready for the next step. Like, every single time. So that's how I kind of look at it. And, not everything can end perfectly, but if they're a great mentor, they also know, like, and I tell my own team this, my hope is you outgrow me. Nothing would make me happier than for you to outgrow me, either on my team or me as my mentor.
Can I amend that a little bit?
Maybe.
Let me try. I don't want you to outgrow me. I want you to catch me, surpass me, and then I want to leapfrog back and forth with you. I want you to become my equal and my peer. Maybe I'm more egotistical than you and more competitive. Like, I don't want you to destroy me. I want you to get where I am, and I want to go back and forth with you. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think, and this is some of the places where you and I go back and forth.
This is an area we differ, maybe.
Right. Well, we have different goals, right? When we talk about surpassing, I know what I'm trying to achieve in life right now. My mentee's goal might be more than what I want. I don't want to be a CRO at a Fortune 500 company. Zero desire. So if I can help a mentee eventually get there, have they surpassed me? In that realm, I would have to say that they have, and I'm perfectly okay with that, right? So it depends on what their goal is. Now, to your point, Scott, if their goal is to become a VP of sales, until I'm ready to pass that torch, best believe you're probably not catching my ass, because I'm going to keep evolving. I'm going to keep learning. I'm going to keep testing. I'm going to keep going through things. But when I say surpass, like, I want, like, nothing would make me happier. Like, I have no problem putting my mentees in touch with other people that can teach them things that I can't. right? Like that to me is also what I mean around outgrow. It doesn't necessarily mean that you've gotten better than me. It means I don't have as much left to teach you anymore, right? So like perfect, actually, I'll use this example. Sean Gentry used to work for me at Snack Nation. Started as a rep, turned into a manager, into a director. He went to Zillow. Now he's at Outreach, just crushing it. They want to put a new role in front of him. It's not a role that I've done. I go into Rev Collective, reach out to some people like, yo, who's good at this? I get some names. I put them in touch. So like we are still in touch as a mentor mentee, but I can't teach him how to be great at the thing that he is now trying to be great at. That's more so what I mean around outgrow.
All right. We're getting towards the end. I'm gonna go a little bit over because I got a few questions here. I got 1, 2, 3. I got 4 more questions that I for sure want to try to get to, as long as you got the time, Katie. Time.
You know where I'm at right now. Yeah, where am I going?
We're ready. We're rolling. Jacqueline, you've been very patient. I appreciate it. Here you go.
Hi, Katie. Thank you so much for joining us today. I was here for your last one. I want to talk about mentorship and entitlement, since that's a theme in my life that I'm trying to steer away from. And speaking from the one that comes from an entitled mindset, just going to be completely honest. And you talked about, shut up, sorry, my microwave. You talked about, what to do, like address them, say, why your desire to learn, how you're currently executing. You also mentioned things not to do, like scheduling time and going ham on your calendar. I want to also know, like, what else? What are the do's and don'ts, and what rubs you the wrong way? What rubs you completely off?
So things that mentees do that drive me nuts, right? 1, lack of execution. We spent 30, 40, 50 minutes, an hour together, and you didn't do what we talked about. Massive pet peeve of mine. So lack of execution. The second would be, I'd call it like a lack of consideration. And this goes both directions. Either one, right, like taking too much time, or not being flexible if something does come up, right? Where it's like, look, I'm trying, but damn it, they just put a board of directors meeting on my calendar. Like, I gotta take that, right? So just being considerate, like remembering the human element, or being late to our meetings or canceling our meetings, right? So like being considerate, I think, is very important. I think another pet peeve of mine, and it takes a while to figure this out, but like silver bullet seekers, right? Where, and kind of back to like the not willing to be uncomfortable, like they get the feedback, they do it once, and they're like, oh, that didn't work, I need something new. Versus like taking the time to be uncomfortable with it till it gets comfortable, right? And so it takes a while to find a silver bullet seeker, where you can tell like they're just trying to find like the magic that's going to turn them into like something that they're not yet. So I think that's a pet peeve on the mentee side. In terms of outreach, like when people reach out to me for mentorship, literally I still have this, and I've shown this to people. Someone reached out and I said, hey, I can't right now. I'm fully booked up. I wish I could be a better resource at the moment. I can't. I'd love to point you to other directions if you let me know what you're looking for. And the response back was like, you know what? I would never want to be mentored by you anyway. Da 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 da. I was like, dude, like, what do you want me to do? Right? Like back to that like entitlement word. So like that's where it's like just be understanding, but also follow up. There are people that have said, hey, hit me up in Q1. Hit me up in Q1. And then what happens? Nothing, right? So I think those are my biggest, I'd say, pet peeves from mentees, is like, and also too, but I've learned too as a mentor, I prevent some of this because I'm very upfront in that first call, like very upfront, like, yo, here's the rules. Here's how this is gonna work, right? And I lay all that out, which I didn't before, because and I can say this, I believe Scott aligns with it too. Like, y'all, like, we want to help. If I could do more, I would. If I could do more, I would. Like, we want to help. We want to see y'all succeed. It hurts when I have to say no. Like, it hurts because I see, I'm like, all right, like, maybe I could squeeze it in at 7 a.m. every morning. Like, we wish we could. We just can't. You know, we are people too. So I think those would be like my pet peeves around like the mentor-mentee relationship. Yeah, like, it's tough. We're all people.
Yeah.
We're all people. I'm far from
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thanks, Jacqueline. And that's trying to squeeze things in. Peace, KD, and that, you know, we want to help. Man, that is so real, you know. I'm sure you're the same way with all the messages you get, but I feel bad sometimes in a very like visceral way that I can't do more, you know. Whether it's just like getting back to somebody fast enough, you know, maybe they asked me something and it took me 2 days to respond, or, you know, somebody's trying to find a job and I teed a few things up and they don't work, and I'm like, fuck, right? Like, it's tough, you know. And we've been talking about this mentorship at scale components. Like, you know, I don't know how many people you feel like you're trying to mentor right now at once, but, you know, I feel the responsibility to hundreds of people, whether they know that they're a mentee of mine or not. I feel responsible to hundreds of people, and that's an element that's not talked about, you know, too often from the mentor side. So those of you who are at a place in your lives, in your career, where you are mentoring other people, be aware of that, you know, and understand that that's not like unique to you. We're all feeling that. We're all trying to solve that. I don't have a good answer for it. I don't know if KD does. But this mentorship at scale thing is something that I think would benefit all of us to think about and try to work on, you know, because we are trying to help as many people as we can. So, Lori Dunn, I believe you have a question.
I sure do. Hey, Katie. Hey, Scott. Thank you for having me. The idea of mentorship has been big in my life right now, of that my current boss and mentor is actually Scott, one of your mentees. And I'm actually AP.
Oh, okay. All right.
Over at then, yeah. And she has me doing, I asked and got into Girls Club with Factor 8 under Laura Bailey. So thinking about leadership, mentorship, building up. I'm currently an AP, an AE, looking to climb. And the question here is really, do I work on paid mentors now, or save that for maybe a VP role and have the company pay for executive mentorship coaching? And what I brought to Scott was, AKA, when do you put cash money in my career growth as opposed to time money? Because right now there's a lot of time money. When do you switch it to putting cash in front of you to pay for that?
I'd say when there's fewer and fewer people you can learn from. You follow me there? So like, as the pool you can learn from gets smaller, that's when you start to dedicate more resources to it. So if you're looking to go from, call it AE to manager, I think there's probably plenty of people out there that have made that transition that you could learn from. And then when you want to go from manager to director, there's probably a slightly smaller pool, but there's probably a decent there to go from. When you're trying to go from director to a specific type of VP, whether that's a scaling VP, an inside VP, an SMB VP, a mid-market VP, an enterprise VP, that's when the pool starts to get smaller. And that's when I think it makes sense to dedicate more resources. Because once the pool is smaller, that's when you almost have to earn that time a little bit more, if that makes sense. So like, that's how I look at it, right? Is like, and I wish, by the way, I wish I had started reaching out for mentorship when I was a manager, because I probably would have skipped a lot of the early management mistakes I made, right? And I wish I had reached out for mentorship when I went to director, because I would have skipped a lot of the mistakes that I made. It wasn't until I was going director to VP that I really started to embrace this. So that would be my advice there.
Does that change on size? Like I'm in like the world.
Size of what? Size of the company?
Size of the company, yeah.
I'm sorry,
So
I didn't follow.
Tiny sales team right now, you know, 1 VP, there's 3 channel and 3 direct sales people. So when I'm looking at that, if there's a potential for either a manager or director, the titles can be kind of blended when they're tiny, as opposed to once you start ramping out, then it becomes more solid of like the manager, then director, then VP. Does that make?
So if I'm hearing it right, so are you asking for a mentorship within a company or outside your company?
Both. Like obviously if I stayed tiny, looking for me, like right now, if I stayed really tiny, like a small sales org, it would be looking for mentorship at kind of maybe that VP or director level. I don't know. Whereas if it were a bit larger, maybe, okay, look for management that would be more time, money, and then start looking higher up, maybe director, VP, that would then start getting cash money when they were bigger.
Yeah. So actually, okay. So this is almost all the way back to the beginning. You want to look for mentors that are doing or have done the thing you want to do, right? So titles. So like one of my favorite examples of a title, Ralph Barsey. Okay, Ralph Barsey is a phenomenal sales dev leader.
A lot of people might not know him, KD, because he's not very active on LinkedIn.
Right.
Yeah.
Dorsey is a G, right? Dorsey's been in this game. He's accomplished amazing things. He was a director and senior director at ServiceNow, right? He's a senior director, no VP title, no VP of sales development, senior director. He had like 300 global reps for ServiceNow. He's a massive part of how that company got to where they're being. So the title, like to the point you're making, the title could be anything. I have hired VPs of sales as an AE, right? Because they were the only AE at the company they were at. So they just claimed the VP title. So look at what you want to do next. Is that manage people? Is that manage managers? Is that establishing channel partnerships? What it is that you want to do next? Find people that are doing or have recently done that thing. Yeah. And that's where you start to reach out.
And match there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Great questions, Lori. Patrick Downey, can you take yourself off mute, Patrick? We got Patrick, and then we're gonna wrap. Patrick, gonna be the last question of the night.
All right. Well, hopefully it's a good one.
I hope
Katie,
so too, Patrick.
I will start this off by saying, I don't know if you know this, but Lo had a post about mentorship about 6 days ago. So that could be a good chance to get into his inbox right there.
Dude, I'm gonna try again.
Yep.
Shoot your shot, KD.
I 100%, you know I will.
I know you will. I absolutely know you will.
Well, let me know how it goes. I'll follow up on Friday. And I guess my question, I feel like you guys have gotten to this a little bit over the course of this conversation. My initial question was, how do I provide value up the food chain for mentors? And now, based on like what you've said and what Scott has said, you guys approach mentorships from a very different place. So I'm curious now, like, what do you get out of it personally as being a mentor for someone?
So it's funny, actually. I think maybe Jacqueline had asked the question too of like, kind of like on the pet peeve side, but like this would also be like how I get value. Share the results, share the wins, right? Like if something worked, tell me, right? Tell us, right? Like share the wins because we're very far removed oftentimes from the results. So like, hey, it worked. Like there was a woman I was mentoring. And it's actually funny. Listen to this sentence. A woman I was mentoring in Q3 and Q4 of last year. She reached out to me when she was in a slump. We set up the calls. She got out of the slump, sent me messages on it like, now I'm #1 AE. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I haven't heard from her. I haven't heard from her since December, right? So like I got both sides there. I got like the win, like, yes, like it's working, but then again, now I got to chase her down. Does that make sense? So that's one place of value. The second is share what you're learning. And I tell this even to my own team. Y'all get to sell every day, right? Like say I'm mentoring a rep, like you're selling every day. What are you learning? Like what's happening, right? Like what do you experience so I can keep that feedback? It's also why I love mentorship. It keeps me, I think, in the game a little bit, of like, all right, let me test some things out. So that would be the other of like value is just share what you're learning, right? And I think that's how mine and Scott's relationship evolved over time, right? It was like, all right, I'm doing these things. Here's how I tweaked it slightly for me or my org. And it seems to be working okay. Oh, okay, interesting, right? Like, and like sharing some of that feedback, I think is another way that we get values because you can't be a carbon copy of me or of Scott or of anybody, but you can take what we teach you and like tweak it enough to see like, oh, okay, like that's another way to do it. Because then that gives us feedback that then we can give to maybe another mentee or another person or even to my own org and say, oh, that's a really good idea. So I'd say that'd be the other place to provide value.
There's also a really like, I'm trying to think of the word. There's also like a really primal version of how do you add value. And what I mean by that is like, when you do well, Patrick, or you do well, KD, I get very excited by that. Like, I love watching you succeed. I love watching you grow. I love watching you boast and send me text messages saying, I just got the biggest check of my life. I love seeing you, get promoted. I love seeing you even leave one company and go to the next. Like, I get pride from that. Like, my ego on some level gets wrapped up in seeing the successes of the people that I am invested in, right? So, there's 41 people still on this, event right now. Like, every single one of you who does well, I promise you, I'm like popping my collar a little bit. Like, look at Patrick go. Look at KD go. Look at Gabby go. Look at Jacqueline go. Look at Hayden go. Every single time. Like, I'm very, I don't know the right word. I'm like very primal with this. Like, that does something for me. That moves me in a very, a very real way, right? And I love hearing about and seeing the successes and the results, how you're progressing, how your lives are changing and improving and all that kind of thing. There's almost no better reward than that. I would take you telling me a success story, Patrick, over me closing a deal any day of the week. The impact is orders of magnitude different. I'll get excited if I close a deal. If I get this note from you that's like, hey man, I just did this, my team did this, I got this raise, I'm on my way to this, I own this much equity, this, like, I'm beaming. Like, that fills me up. That fills my cup in a way that closing a deal for myself doesn't, So that's a huge part of the reward for me. And I think it's probably the same way for KD as well.
Yep. I think that's why I started with share the results. Let us know what's working, right? Like that we don't always get to see that. And so like those are things that help and matter. Because I think a perfect way to wrap on all this as we kick off is like, mentors are people just like mentees are people, right? We do, the right mentors care. We do care. But we're not perfect. Like we try, but we're not perfect. We can't get back to everyone. We can't hit every message. Like we try, but we can't, and those are things where it's hard, and it's hard to be a mentor. It's hard to be a mentee. I think sometimes it's harder to be a mentor than it is to be a mentee. to be a mentee, like put in the effort, put in the work to find it, but also like be patient, be understanding, understand like, hey, like your mentors are trying to, right? Like shit, your mentors probably have what? Mentors, like we're all still learning as we go through this game. And so I think that's the thing to do here, y'all, is mentorship can literally change your life, literally change your life.
Yeah.
It can accelerate your career. You can succeed beyond what you thought you could do and do it earlier. Be willing to put in that effort and that work, and it'll pay off. So I appreciate y'all. This was fun. Like, I'm glad we could do this. Obviously, we went long every time Scott and I chatted. It was long. But I appreciate y'all. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here, buddy. Appreciate you spending some time with us. I appreciate all the great questions from all of you, and we'll see you again next week on Tequila Tuesday.
Let's go.
Cheers.